Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow, and everyone around you, your friends, your family, even strangers in the street, has started speaking a language you no longer understand. Their eyes light up over things that seem hollow to you. They argue fiercely over values that feel arbitrary, defend truths that crumble under scrutiny, and chase goals that once thrilled you, but now ring disturbingly empty. You try to keep up. You nod. You smile. You mimic. But something inside you is splitting, not from arrogance, but from clarity. You've seen behind the curtain, and what you saw wasn't evil, or grand, or complex. It was nothing. A soft, whispering nothingness at the heart of so much conviction. How can a world run on so many certainties feel so hollow? How can a culture obsessed with answers grow more anxious, more divided, more distracted? Why do we pride ourselves on progress when we still crumble at death, loneliness, and meaninglessness? Have you ever noticed how often people answer before they even understand the question? They debate success without asking what it is. They chase happiness without defining joy. They talk about love, yet fear vulnerability. They accept jobs, ideologies, relationships, and entire worldviews the way they accept software terms and conditions, scrolling to the end and clicking agree, just to move on. And yet, beneath it all, there's a quiet rebellion stirring in you. A sense that the script you were handed might be flawed, that the default setting of the human mind, react, conform, consume, repeat, might not be the only way. That maybe, just maybe, there's something deeper to become. But who questions the questioners? Who dares to step outside the comfort of inherited beliefs, to risk disapproval, discomfort, and disorientation in pursuit of truth? What if thinking, truly thinking, isn't about finding answers at all? What if it's about learning how to sit in the fire of not knowing, not needing resolution, not seeking applause? What if the philosopher isn't the one who knows more, but the one who dares to be unsure, more deeply? And if that's true, what does it mean for the way you live, love, and lead? This is where your transformation begins. But first we must uncover the enemy, hidden in plain sight. You were never taught how to think. You were taught how to remember, how to repeat, how to perform. You were rewarded for having the right answer, not for asking the right question. The system didn't care if your answer made sense to you. It only cared if it matched the key. From the moment you entered a classroom, society began crafting you into a functional unit, a thinker, no, a performer, a reactor, an obedient node in a vast web of unchallenged assumptions. Slowly, invisibly, your mind was shaped, not like clay, but like a mold already set. You were taught what to value, what to fear, what to ignore, and you internalized it all, confusing inheritance for insight. Carl Jung once warned that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And you've seen it, haven't you? The way people drown in entertainment to avoid solitude. The way noise becomes a narcotic. The way constant motion hides the emptiness underneath. What's more unsettling is this: most of it isn't conscious. It's a reflex built over time. We resist thought not because we're incapable, but because somewhere deep down, we sense what it will cost us. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that humans are driven by a blind, irrational will, a craving without end. We distract ourselves with pleasures, illusions, and arguments not because we care about truth, but because we can't bear the silence that truth demands. Truth is slow, painfully slow. It has no scoreboard, no applause, just you, alone, pulling at the threads of everything you've been taught to believe. Friedrich Nietzsche, more defiant still, saw through the herd mind. He asked, "Are you honest enough for the truth?" That's the real challenge, isn't it? Truth isn't about facts, it's about courage. The courage to admit that what makes you feel safe might be a lie, that your certainty might be your cage. Society teaches you to think with it, not beyond it, to be clever, but not wise, loud, but not lucid, to win arguments, but not understand yourself. And that is the hidden problem, not ignorance, but the illusion of understanding. We mistake agreement for truth. We cling to borrowed convictions because they feel familiar, not because we've examined them. We confuse mental activity with clarity and self-expression with self-awareness. It's psychological camouflage. It keeps you accepted, but never awakened. Jean-Paul Sartre said that existence precedes essence, meaning you are not born with purpose. You must create it. But how can you create something you've never been trained to seek? Instead, most inherit an essence handed to them by family, culture, media, and wear it like a costume they forget is not their skin. This isn't about blaming parents or teachers. They were shaped by the same machinery. This is about you recognizing the machinery itself, seeing how easy it is to drift into a life that was never truly yours, and it runs deep. The moment you start to question, you're labeled contrarian, difficult, rebellious, because to truly think is a threat, not to society, necessarily, but to the illusions that keep it intact. And yet, something in you knows. You've felt it, a quiet, persistent sense that there's more, just out of reach. But that more comes at a cost. Because once you start thinking like a philosopher, you can't go back. The world doesn't change, but your eyes do. And once your eyes change, the consequences ripple into everything: your identity, your relationships, your sense of time, even your definition of reality. Let's go deeper. Let's examine what happens when you don't break free, when the hidden problem starts to shape the very fabric of your life without you knowing. You don't notice it at first. You laugh when others laugh. You nod when you're supposed to. You chase the same milestones everyone else celebrates: graduation, career, partnership, a house, maybe children. It feels like progress. It feels like success. But slowly, beneath the noise of deadlines and dopamine, something starts to ache. It's not pain, exactly. It's dissonance. The feeling that you're living a life made of copy-pasted scripts, that your days are full but your soul is starving. You begin to sense it in quiet moments: brushing your teeth, stuck in traffic, lying awake after scrolling for too long. A subtle sense that you're running towards something, but can't quite name what. And worse, you're not even sure it's yours. This is the cost of not thinking like a philosopher. When you outsource your questions to culture, you inherit its blind spots. And culture is blind in all the ways that matter. It teaches you to fear slowness, boredom, depth. It celebrates efficiency, spectacle, and surface-level certainty. It feeds your ego while starving your inner world. Let's go deeper. Cognitive science tells us that the brain, ever efficient, runs on patterns. It builds heuristics, mental shortcuts to save energy. But these shortcuts, useful for survival, can become prisons for the soul. Confirmation bias filters out dissonant truths. The availability heuristic prioritizes what's most visible, not what's most important. The spotlight effect makes you think the world is watching your every move, judging your every misstep, when in truth, they're all too busy worrying about themselves. The mind becomes a hall of mirrors, reflecting your own fears back at you, convincing you they're real. Meanwhile, the media feeds you symbols of meaning that decay on contact with real life. A new car, a perfect vacation, a viral post. These aren't answers, they're placeholders. They give the illusion of progress, while keeping you distracted from the essential question: why do I exist? Philosophers call this bad faith. Sartre used the term to describe the act of self-deception, when you willingly adopt a false identity to escape the burden of freedom. When you say, I have to, instead of I choose to. When you live according to a script, because the blank page terrifies you. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because when you ignore that ache long enough, it doesn't vanish. It mutates. It becomes anxiety, depression, midlife crises, addiction to noise, obsession with productivity, or the vague yet persistent sense that everyone else got a manual you missed. Arthur Miller once wrote that most people are not living their lives. They're acting out the myth of their lives. And those myths, they're usually built on fear. Fear of failure, fear of standing alone, fear of what you might discover if you dig too deep. And so we construct lives that are safe, predictable, and numb. But numbness has a cost. It seeps into everything. Into your relationships, where you repeat patterns you never question. Into your work, where you perform, but rarely create. Into your sense of self, where you wear labels but can't feel who you are beneath them. This isn't about pessimism, it's about truth. About seeing clearly. You see, not thinking like a philosopher doesn't just mean you're uninformed. It means you're asleep, in plain sight. And the world rewards this sleep. It calls it normal. It calls it mature. But what it really is compliance. You become easy to market to, easy to manipulate, easy to scare, easy to control. Because a person who does not question becomes a vessel, filled by others, emptied by life. And still something in you resists. That resistance, it's not rebellion, it's recognition. A part of you already knows there must be another way, a freer way, a truer way, not just to think differently, but to be differently. The rebellion doesn't begin with fire. It begins with silence, not the silence of retreat, but of awakening, the kind that stirs just before the storm breaks, when you realize that the noise was never knowledge, and movement was never meaning. To think like a philosopher is not to escape life, but to enter it fully, naked of assumption, and clothed in curiosity. This rebellion begins when you stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "Why do I believe what I believe?" You start to trace the roots of your opinions. You examine the architecture of your convictions, and in doing so, you break the first chain, the illusion of certainty. It will feel like betrayal, like you're turning on everything that gave you comfort. But that discomfort is not your enemy, it's your invitation. Aldous Huxley once wrote, "Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored." And the fact is, the moment you start questioning the script, the world begins to change, not because it actually does, but because you're finally seeing it. Start small. Ask, who told me this was success? Why do I fear boredom? What if love isn't what I was taught, but something deeper, messier, truer? Challenge inherited beliefs, not with hostility, but with honest doubt. Friedrich Nietzsche championed this when he said, "A casual stroll through the lunatic asylum shows that faith does not prove anything." It's not about dismissing belief, it's about earning it. And what does that mean in practice? It means learning to slow down, to resist the impulse to react, to pause before agreeing, to allow silence to stretch longer than is comfortable. Because that's when real thought emerges, not the rehearsed scripts, but the raw, unfiltered truths that only come when you're brave enough to sit with uncertainty. Thinking like a philosopher means swapping reaction for reflection. You begin to cultivate the metacognition, thinking about your thinking, noticing the tricks your mind plays to keep you safe, the rationalizations, the false dichotomies, the urge to defend before understanding. You become a pattern breaker, and slowly, something miraculous happens. You stop needing to be right. You stop being a slave to your emotions, not because you suppress them, but because you understand them. Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." That space, small as a breath, is where the philosopher lives. Rebellion also means learning the art of detachment, not indifference, but clarity. You realize that your thoughts are not you, your feelings are not facts, and your identity is not fixed. You start to laugh at things you used to defend. You no longer cling to being the smartest, or most correct, or most certain. You find joy in learning. You find grace in not knowing. And then you begin to live with intention. You choose your words with care, because you understand their weight. You listen with full attention, because you're not preparing to respond. You're preparing to understand. You read not to confirm, but to be transformed. You observe your own reactions as if watching another person, with curiosity, not judgment. You begin to construct a new mind, not one that avoids pain, but one that learns from it. Not one that fears contradiction, but one that dances with it. You start seeing the philosopher in others too, in the child who keeps asking why, long after adults have surrendered, in the artist who expresses what cannot be spoken, in the hermit, the monk, the dissenter, the lover, anyone brave enough to move against the current of expectation. This rebellion is not loud. It's deep. It doesn't destroy. It transforms. Quietly, radically. And once you step into this path, there is no going back. Because the rewards are too real, too rich. You start to taste life, not just consume it. You stop existing in reaction to others, and begin living in alignment with your own examined truths. Here it is. The truth philosophers have chased for centuries, wrapped not in complexity, but in clarity. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which they arise. Every label, belief, fear, identity, temporary. Every ideology, borrowed. Every opinion, evolving. But what remains? The awareness beneath it all. The still presence watching the chaos. Thinking like a philosopher isn't about stacking knowledge. It's about peeling away illusion. It's realizing that truth isn't something you possess. It's something you stand before, humbled. The final power is this: to live as a question, not a conclusion. To embrace not knowing as freedom, not failure. To hold contradiction without needing resolution. To see beauty in complexity, and wholeness in imperfection. When you reach this place, everything shifts. You stop arguing. You start understanding. You stop chasing. You start being. You stop fearing silence. You listen, and in that stillness, the world becomes new. Not because it changed, but because you did. You've been asleep in a dream of certainty. Now, you're awake in the mystery. Stay there. Think bravely. Live freely.